This mixing with mic tip is on FET compression, which stands for field effects transistors. So let's take a look here and talk a little bit about this. Now, the FET compression is basically more or less a variation of a VCA compressor, and the basic idea is very similar. And you notice very similar if you've watched some of the other tips on compression. The idea is basically very similar. You're taking an amplifier and you're controlling this amplifier in some way. Now, FET components are quite often used to emulate tube distortion characteristics and things of that nature. And so an FET compressor can take on a lot of different kind of characteristic sounds, and they can definitely color the sound. Very much like a VCA compressor, they have an enormous amount of control in terms of the attack and the release time. So when you're talking about fast attacks and fast release times, or the ability to control the shape of those attack and release times, it's very similar to the VCA compressor in that regard. And in general, they have a tendency to sound a bit more colored in terms of the way that it affects the sound quality. The thing about FET compression, like VCA compression, is you can kind of get a little heavy with it, a little heavy-handed with it, and it still kind of holds its own. It doesn't kind of pinch or shrink the sound down too much. Much of this is, just like the VCA compressor, is based off of the quality of the components. And many of these compressors, like the FET compressor, are coupled with other components that kind of help color the tonal characteristic of the sound. So it's very often that you will see, even in an optical or a compressor, will have tubes as part of the circuitry, or transformers as part of the circuitry. The Fairchild compressor, which is a real Veramu compressor, will also have transformers in the circuit and other tubes that are helping to shape the audio quality, right? The sound of the audio as you're going through it. The classic FET-based compressor, and the basic way that it works is that you're either, similar to the VCA, you're either doing a feed-forward or a feedback circuit, and essentially the input signal is giving instructions to an amplifier that determines the amount and how the gain reduction is applied. So that signal is analyzed, and then a voltage is fed in like a sidechain into the amplifier, which instructs it as to how much gain or gain reduction to apply. Essentially, you're applying negative gain, if you want to look at it that way, when you're dealing with compression, because we're only talking about downward compression here, not upward compression, where you would be adding gain. So the only gain stage would technically be the output or makeup gain. Now, the classic compressors that you will find that are FET compressors that are really high quality are the 1176, originally by Yuri. Hold on, they're kind of getting a little slow response here from the graphic. And then the Crane Song, which is a real discrete Class A compressor. So the quality of the components used in the Crane Song compressor are incredibly high-end Class A components, and so it's a great component for mastering and gives you a great amount of control in terms of the attack release characteristics, and therefore becomes an incredibly valuable tool in the mastering process. The 1176, originally made by Yuri, comes in a couple different varieties. There were many different variations of it, and many will call their compressors FET because it becomes a signature of the 1176, which is by far the most popular and widely known of the FET kind of compressors. Now, when you get an FET compressor here, what we got on this is there a blue version, or the blue face or silver plated version with a blue color around the meter, or the black face version. This is the waves emulation of the 1176, which is very good. And again, it can be used in a variety of different ways. So let's start with the vocal here. One of the things that you get is a characteristic fast attack and fast release time. So you get a lot of control here. So what we have is a fast attack. I can slow down the attack. Right? And then what happens with this particular compressor is that you have a fixed threshold. And that's not necessarily the case with FET compressors. You have a lot of control over them in terms of having a threshold. Some components, like tube components, don't really have a threshold per se. It's just based off of how hard you hit the circuit. And so, especially when you're getting into vintage components, this will vary from unit to unit. So, and the 1176 is one example of that. So you control the basic where the signal is triggered based off of adjusting the input signal, and then you can adjust the output gain accordingly. So in that respect, you get these numbers here as opposed to something that would be a 0 line, and your threshold would be specific numbers based off of +4 voltage. That's not the way that it works. And so you get different, ratios, which can be set. Adjustable attack and release. In this particular one, you would think that the number 1 would be a fast attack, but it actually works the opposite way. So the number 7 is a fast attack, so it kind of works in reverse. But a lot of control over the attack release characteristic. And like a VCA compressor, that can also be shaped in a certain way, so it's not necessarily linear. It can be linear if you want it to be linear. And again, this is a design of the component based off of the unit in the analog realm. When you deal with it in the digital realm, then you have much more control over the way that you basically work with it. And this is one approach. Another classic approach with this one is to push all of the buttons in, all of the ratio buttons in, which puts it into more or less a hyper compression mode, where you're hitting it very hard, as you can see here. And it's all right now. And when you listen to it, you would expect the high frequencies to collapse a lot more than what they do. And when you really listen to it, it actually maintains a lot of that characteristic. And then you could set the release characteristic to create the pumping and breathing type of effect. So this is a very common compressor that is used for the big pumping and breathing drums and that type of thing, and it can add a unique kind of color. This particular compressor also has transformers built into it, which help add a warming characteristic to the sound. So and this is the classic FET compressor, and there you go. There's another mixing with Mike tip, this one on FET compression. If you like what you see and you want to see more, then go to mpginsider.com. And you can join the live classes by signing up for the newsletter. You'll receive a notification with links to attend the live classes every Wednesday. They're 2-hour classes. I mix multi-track songs. I analyze people's mixes live online. You can ask questions to me live online. I ask questions, give you more tips on mixing, show you a whole ton of mixing techniques by actually applying them in real time. So I bring the multi-track mixes in and I mix them. I don't preview them or work out all the best things ahead of time. I work through it the way I would work through anything, and therefore you see a more natural progressive process in terms of the way that I run and teach the classes. So there you have it. There's another Mixing with Mike tip. Go to mpginsider.com for more information. Thanks for tuning in.